So let me just introduce all our esteemed panelists that we have right now on the virtual screens in front of us. We don't get to see all these people so often in our day-to-day lives. So I think it's time that we have a one-to-one session with them. The first esteemed panelist that we have with us is Mr. Sudhir Pai, who's the CEO of Magicbricks.com. He's an astute thinker and a keen strategist. Sudhir has been the driving force behind the stupendous rise of Magicbricks as India's #1 property site. He has over 16 years of management experience and brings rich multi-industry exposure, having worked across FMCG, medical, electronics, banking, and internet sectors. He has been with the Times of Internet for the past 12 years, out of which 6 years have been with Time Jobs and the last 6 years with Magicbricks. Congratulations, Sudhirji. I have cut the introduction a little short because we wasted a lot of time because of the technical glitch. So I think a lot of people already know you, a lot of people already know Magicbricks, and people who are in the real estate industry, they can't afford not to know what Magicbricks is all about. So welcome, Sudhirji.
Thanks, Sahil, for the generous introduction.
Thank you so much. The next panelist that we have is Dr. Nitesh Kumar, who is the CEO of Emami Realty. Emami, everybody knows, is a household name, and now I am very, very sure that they're going to be a household name in real estate as well. Dr. Kumar is a PhD in management, a double postgraduate in management, having a trend-setting experience of more than 27 years. His field of expertise spans through real estate development, strategic planning, marketing, mergers and acquisition, and branding. He has served in various capacities in many of the top corporate, including Indiabulls Real Estate Limited. He's a wizard in turnkey management to actualize real estate development vision into a reality. He has been also named as the best CEO of the year, Construction Times Builders Award, and many other awards following that. Welcome, Niteshji. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Yeah, thank you, Sahil.
Thank you so much for being with us. Unfortunately, Sriramji from Shapoorji could not join us because there was some kind of a unfortunate incident in his family. So in his place, we have none but I think a much credible source from Shapoorji Pallonji, one of the top Indian construction companies. We have Abhishek Badkul, who's the Vice President, Joyville, Shapoorji Housing. Abhishek is the VP Marketing for Joyville, Shapoorji Real Estate, and responsible for driving sales, business strategy, all sites operation, profitability across all the projects. He has a broad experience of 15 plus years in real estate, banking, and financial industry. Then we have Mr. Gaurav Marya, who is the chairman of Franchise India Group and who is the managing director and CEO of REMAX India. Mr. Gaurav Marya is fondly known as the franchising guru in the industry. He has been in the industry for almost 2.5 decades. And right now he's running one of the largest real estate brokerage companies of the country, which is REMAX India. So welcome everyone. I have my co-panelists with me, Chetan Raghav and Smitaji. Smitaji, if you would allow me, shall we begin with the discussion?
Yeah, I would like to
Minister.
Very, very warm good evening. And I would like to meet the transmitter and director of REMAX. And I welcome all our different panelists, our attendees who will be titled Addressing Real Estate Challenges and Opportunities of Covid-19. So, it is said that evaluation is the key to the best decision ever made, and understanding the current times is important for the buyers and investors to know the insights and forecasts which help them make their decisions. So we are pleased to have this powerful panel here today to know the perspectives on the current industry scenarios and the measures taken by the government for developers to overcome the current challenges and understand the opportunities awaiting. So we know that all the attendees are eager to listen all of you, and we may have lots of questions. So I request you to put your questions in the question and answer box, and we will try to address as many as we can. And now we can start with the session. We have our Sahil Kabir and Chetan Raghav from REMAX India, and welcome all the panelists here.
Thank you, Smitaji. I had a question for the Honorable Minister, but since he's not here, so I'll move on to the next one. I have a common question to all our esteemed panelists today. See, there are a lot of opinions right now flowing around the market, whether it is the right time to buy or not, whether it is the right time to invest or not. I mean, I'm keeping the first-time buyers and investors into two different brackets. I'm not trying to make a mistake of probably labeling them as a single entity because they are two very, very different, I would say, people. We would like to have your opinion on what are the key points that anybody should keep in mind if they're looking to buy or invest right now? Or do you first of all feel whether it is the right time for them to invest or not? So my first question to you, Mr. Sudhir Pai.
Thanks, Sahil. So this is a question that we often get asked often by users on what is probably the right time to buy a house. So our view all along has been as follows, right? So like you said, divide consumers into two different segments. There are people who are investors and buying a second home or buying with an aspiration of price appreciation in the future. And there is a second set of consumers who are actually end users who are buying it for their own consumption. Now, if you look at the investor group, I mean, a lot of them have really exited the market in the last few years, primarily because prices have been flattish in real estate and the investment returns have sort of dried up, right? And it looks like it will remain that way for at least some more time to come. But if you look at end users, right now, real estate is not an impulse purchase, right? It is something that you buy, and if you want to live in it, you're going to live for several years. It is a significant purchase. You're going to pay, if you're going to take a home loan, you're going to settle it over 10 or 15 years. So given the nature of the real estate buy, if you're buying it for end use, the view that we've maintained all along is almost any time is a good time to consider buying a real estate. That said, you must make sure that you buy it at a price which is favorable. You buy it at a price which is equal or maybe slightly below market. You would feel good with the purchase. And I think in the current environment, it was a buyer's market even pre-COVID. Now with post-COVID and with the developing circumstances, it's going to become even more of a buyer's market. It's a good time to ask for deals, good time to get a good pricing situation for yourself. And if you're an end user, certainly be in the market, find a good deal.
So basically, if you find a good deal, if you're a good negotiator, probably a good time to buy. Because I think a lot of developers, even banks, they're supporting you with certain incentives, which you might not get maybe 6 months down the line when the market picks up. So the same question to Nitesh ji. Nitesh ji, what's your view on this?
Great question. This is a question, as Sudhir had mentioned, is an ongoing question that is going on, especially in the COVID times. And first of all, good evening to everybody, and I hope all of you are safe. And I see already about close to 300 attendees. This is great credit to REMAX for the experts of real estate and the brokers community. And I see, and I've been told a lot of NRIs also have joined it. That's great. So let us understand the COVID crisis, and accept that that's a global phenomenon. That is something unprecedented. This has not been seen in the last 90 years. The last was plague and Spanish flies, which was more than 90 years old. So all the countries, are bleeding, are seeing a sluggishness in the economy, and India is also in the same frame. Let us now understand the pandemic in real estate terms. There is no doubt, all the real estate companies, as Sudhir also mentioned, are actually facing the economic crisis. They are trying to figure out, how to come over the same. They are the fixed expenses that is still maintained, and the inflows are rather died up. And there's a great mismatch in the cash flows. And more so, beyond the moratorium period that has been granted by the government, we are trying to figure out, as for the developers community, how to pay up the interest that is going to go up. In fact, we all are trying hard from CREDAI and NEREDCO forums, to extend the moratoriums, rather waive off the interest during this moratorium period. A lot of incentives have been given, but a lot more can be done into it. But they are all kind of predictions that are going on. Some are saying, this period is going to come back to normalcy in maybe 3 to 4 months from now. Some people are commenting it's not going to come back even 2 years. On what basis of data and how this data and how these predictions are coming, I really fail to understand. I would like to mention that in the pre-COVID times, in this first quarter only, I was hearing predictions by one of the mutual fund gurus, and he's very, I don't want to name it in this forum, but he was predicting that within 6 months, the stock market is going to about 50,000 and the end of the year by 80,000. I don't know where these guys are hiding and what has happened to them. I don't understand. So this is something which somebody can't predict, this is something that we have to live with it. And as Sahil has mentioned, that we have to find innovative ways to and sharpen skills to come out. Coming back to the question, is right time to buy the property? I'd like to quote Sir Warren Buffett. He said, be fearful when the others are greedy. Be fearful when the others are greedy, and be greedy when the others are fearful. That's very adept at this point of time. Let us understand the real estate as a macro level. I would like to answer this question one at the macro level, and the real estate in the economy in present situation, and that at the micro level, which is customer based. Real estate, one has to understand, is very critical to any nation's economy. In India, if you say, it is the real estate, it transforms to close to 6% of the GDP, and it's the second biggest employer after agriculture. So it has to come back. If you compare the GDP percentage for the rest of the world, like developed nations of US and UK, where the real estate is contributing close to 12% and 14%. What it translates is that there are a lot of infrastructural development which is still there, that is going to come in the many years to come. That is something that this is inevitable. That is, it is bound to happen. The second trigger that has happened is, if you see the current data, right, of the unsold inventories. Many of the data are going in Magicbricks and 99 acres, and Sudhir is here. Well, there are about 7.39 lakh units unsold inventories which are lying in India alone, right? It's a huge inventories. The worth of this inventories are close to 6,000 crore rupees. Tremendous out there. But if you closely see this data, out of this, only 12% of the unsold inventories are ready properties, right? And if you further go in the details of this data, 5 lakh units of the unsold inventories are under construction. They are waiting for the last mile funding, which is coming from various avenues and liquidity being infused in the market, and the Swami fund, which is backed by the SBI cap, right? But I understand the demand is drying up, in this present time, but so is the supply. If the supply of the ready flats in India are very limited, there are limited options out there, right? Now, I would like to come to at the micro level, at the customer. This is something a buyer needs to question himself, whether it's the right time to buy the property, right? Whether he wants to upgrade his present house to a larger house. We all are locked up in situations that every member of the family wants to have their separate private rooms, and we are all realizing that, my house is not enough, and the husbands used to come in the night and they used to sleep, and children used to have common rooms. So many people want to upgrade their present accommodations. The second category is the people who are living on rent. Now they are paying rents in various parts of the city, is waiting for various renters based on the city. Now they, and during this time, as I've been told, have had some bitter experiences, right, from the landlords and from the group housing societies. So they were treated like second citizens out there. This is the time, that they have taken a decision that I want to buy, right? And the third trigger that is happening out there is the RBI announcing last end of March that they reduced the repo rate by 75 basis points. Thus, home loan available at 7.4, 7.6%. Though I still think this is higher, because the repo rate right now to the banks is close to 4%, and the home loans available more than 7%. So it should actually come down to 5% level, so that the volumes are increasing out there. So all these things a buyer should answer himself. The second thing that he should question is that right now the economic scenario in India, the liquidity being infused, it's a favorable environment that the government is making. Please understand, right? There are all kind of critics that might go on decisions of using 20 lakh crores in the economy ranging from agriculture to fishermen to space to discoms to the MFIs to the NBFCs. Everything is going on. There's a favorable environment people are bringing out there. So all this, if you translate and correlate, the third part that is going on, which in-house also we are contemplating, there are all kind of opinions which are coming, that the house that they want to buy, is it the least possible price that they can buy? Are they going to be more discounts that will be offered by the developers? I can say from the developers forum that, all developers working at single-digit margins. The discounts which are going to come up are going to come up by the incentives granted by the government, like the home loan rates, like the liquidity being induced in the market. These discounts by these ways are going to come. Developers are not going to grant 10, 15, 20% because they hardly have the margins. If somebody is trying to offer, 20, 25% discount, you have to be very cautious out of it. So if you correlate all these questions which a prospective buyer have to question himself, I think it's a great time to buy. But mind it, at this point of time, you have to be very cautious. This is a life-saving earning. It's maybe the most expensive decision in his lifetime to buy a property. So my name of the game, which I advocate very firmly right now, that people will prefer RTMs. What are RTMs? Ready to move in properties. By ready to move in properties, they can further get a discount of GST, because once you have the completion certificates, you can have the GST waiver. So if you translate everything, the home loan interest rates, the GSTs, the house, this is how the discount's going to come in.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nitesh. That was quite elaborate. And I think other than getting married, this is actually one of the most expensive decisions that anybody ever takes in their life. And I think in the last 2 odd months, people have, other than probably knowing their spouses and children better, they've analyzed their house really closely. People have realized what they need out of an ideal house if they want to upgrade and if they want to buy their first house. So, I mean, my question to Abhishek, I mean, couple of years back in Gurgaon, I remember you came up with a project, and when everybody was saying that the market is down, you guys probably sold it maybe 2.5 times. You have your projects almost in every nook and corner of the country, from north, west, east as well, and even in south. So what is your real pulse of the market? Do you think people are really coming forward and buying right now, and they will continue to do so, and why?
Thanks, Sahil, for asking that question. I think it took us some time from real estate perspective. We had never thought that we can connect with customers online and actually customers can buy their homes online. But our teams have had across locations has been phenomenal. We are getting a lot of inquiries. I see two trends emerging. One trend is from the end users, as Nitesh ji pointed out, that there is a sentiment in the customers that apna ghar hai to safe hai. So that desire to have their own home. We have millennials buying it quite a times compared to the data. If we review it for a year, comparatively it's less. But we see a trend of millennials coming forward and looking forward to buy a home. From investors' point of view, I am looking. I see which is an end user market. I see some traction from investor point of view, considering the volatility in the stock market, even the debt markets, and other fixed avenues of investment. So we are seeing an increasing trend, and obviously there is a flight to quality, and that's why you will see that for good brands, for corporates managing these projects, customer preferences will be higher. And depending upon the requirement for an end user, it will always be good to move into a near possession or a ready possession apartment. And an investor will look for time that he can plan the investment. I think it's quite an exciting time ahead here at Shapoorji Palonji, and I'm sure for all other corporate developers.
Yes, thank you, Abhishek. I think very rightly said. Anything which is branded, anything which is credible, anything with a good track record, that is something which will definitely sell irrespective of what the market sentiments are. Because at the end of the day, house is a very, very basic need. Everybody needs it. And there are so many people in this country who are living on rent, who are wanting to buy their first house. And with all the incentives given by the government, people would definitely want to jump in. The same question to Mr. Marya with a little bit of a twist. Sir, your offices are operational on almost 50 cities of this country. I mean, you have a pulse of not only the metros, but even the tier 1, the tier 2, and the tier 3 towns. So what is your assessment of the market and the customer sentiments, the investor and the first-time buyer sentiments right now?
Thanks, Sahil, and thank you everyone for making it to the forum. I think, sorry for the glitches. I think, and Smitaji, thank you very much for organizing these forums. It's very important that we all continue to connect and share our views. So Sahil, my viewpoint is, so this is a very uncertain time, so anybody who's trying to make a strong predictability or making a case and say what is going to happen in next 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, is very wrong in sense. We need to really understand that and divide this whole thing into 3 parts. And one is what I call sentiment. So what is the sentiment now? And you rightly said we not only at a group level, we are not only in real estate, but we are also in the other asset class investment cycles also. But I can tell you very strongly that at this stage, nobody wants to invest into any other asset class outside real estate. Real estate is the most, desired, also most believed in this country from an investment class. Now, that's a broader sentiment, So sentiment says that if anybody has money and if you want to secure, or I call it a security and a little bit of saving, both our sentiments are very clearly telling that real estate is the best asset class. So, which means that home is the most secured environment we all in, and also it's a thing which has actually saved the last dollar. So fundamentally, anybody who has some wealth left is coming from real estate today. So fundamentally, I think everybody from a sentiment viewpoint thinks that real estate is great. The second part, which is very important, which has a functionality of what I call the entire ecosystem, the developers, the bankers, the administration, the overall regulation, and so on and so forth, which is called affordability. So, and also I think affordability is also about how people are going to get jobs and what is going to happen to the environment and so on and so forth. So affordability is my problem. So that's something which so sentiment is not. Sentiment means if anybody has money, including all the 300 odd people on the group, if they have money, they would invest in it. And real estate would be the class to invest. That's not a problem. But I think affordability is a question which we need to address and say how are they going to get finance and how they would be able to handle their EMIs and so on and so forth. So that's something which we have to crack. As a nation, we need to crack that. And third is decision making. Decision making is all very difficult times, because when this whole thing happens, people get into the hold on time. So they don't take decisions. And decision would come from 3 things I call the CPO principle. The CPO principle is how do you bring credibility? So credibility is very important. And at REMAX or at Magicbricks, Sudhir's platform, or anybody player, we need to really play a very important role at this stage to pass that credibility out there. And also credible developers, Shapoorji, Emami, all these are corporate brands, how they establish the credibility in the market by building some kind of investor confidence. Second is performance by asset class. I think that's very important. And in the last webinar also, I said, how do you measure that? Performance is very difficult in India and real estate to measure, how your investment is going to pay off over next 3, 4, 5 years and so on and so forth. And third is last mile user experience. And I feel that this time around, user experience has been the most critical part. And I see a lot of developers which are great. I don't want to name them on a forum. Some developers are extremely great. They have looked after their communities so well, and they have looked after their people who are living with them, their ability to service them, and so on and so forth. So that I think is user experience play a very important role now for people to take decisions. So the CPO principle would play very important for the decision making side. So again, to just summarize this entire sentiment is strong. I feel that sentiment is not gone anywhere. Affordability is something which we need to collectively think through. And I think decision making would come from this CPO principle. How do we really able to build that confidence in investor to come out and make that decision to buy now?
Thank you so much, Mr. Marya. And I think very rightly said, real estate is something which is one of the best investment asset class in terms of any kind of instruments, the all other things available. But I think one thing we all need to do is start speaking the same language. I see mutual funds, everybody says mutual fund sahi hai. I think it's high time we start saying real estate sahi hai. I mean, I might be blamed for plagiarism, but this is something that we need to start speaking one single language, because we all know it is one of the most important assets that we would ever own. I mean, in markets like US, people buy 6 to 7 homes. I mean, they keep changing homes every probably 3 years to 4 years. The cycle is very less. That time is real far for India, but still, I mean, real estate, as we all know, is one of the most important things. Over to you, Chetan. Chetan, we can't hear you. You're not audible. Still, Chetan, you're not audible. Chetan, I'll go ahead. I think still your voice is not there, so I'll go ahead. So, Abhishek, I wanted to ask, because we have a lot of people who have joined in from non-metro cities as well. So, what is your estimation and idea right now? Which ones are the quicker to probably fight this pandemic and come back stronger? Is it the metros or is it the tier 1, tier 2 cities? What do you think the real estate market bouncing back quickly?
Interesting question, Sahil. All the metros are in the red zone. So unfortunately, we have been zoned. You know, if casteism and others were not enough, now we have zonism. All the metros are in the red zone. I think because the metros have been impacted a lot, and so they will take a lot more time. But you know, if we just expand this question further, the tier 1 or especially the tier 2 town, they will be able to come back stronger because they don't depend upon the public transport. They already were in the orange or green zone, so to say. So their local economies had started off somewhat. And I also see that now going forward, for example, I belong to Indore. Now, while Indore is in a red zone, it's impacted. But I have seen that a lot of corporates had taken away land or fixed infrastructure, but people were not employed there. I see that these tier 1, tier 2 cities, which are well connected by air and trains, you will see a lot of job creation by these corporates now, and obviously the commercial values will be lesser there. So definitely tier 1, tier 2 cities will be back on track faster because they have been impacted lesser, and their local economies, the engine has started rolling there.
Yes, and I think globally as well, cities like New York, which are the center of attraction in the business and all the activity, they're the hub. They're the ones who have been impacted more, and likewise Delhi and Bombay, they've been impacted a lot. But I think at the end of the day, real estate business in the top 8 cities comprise for almost 50% of the real estate market of India. So sooner or later, they're going to be bouncing back very quickly as well. Thanks, Abhishek. Smritaji, over to you for the next question.
Yeah, I would like to ask Gaurav sir that out of the 3 segments in the housing market, like affordable, mid-luxury and luxury segment, which segment do you feel gaining the most traction in the next 3 to 6 months, and why you feel so?
Yeah, that's very tricky, Smitaji. I think while per capita housing is the lowest in India, so by all scientific structure, low-cost housing should always be in demand. So there is no reason why it should not be demand. But now we have to look at the consumption DG. The consumption DG essentially is people who are in jobs and so on and so forth. So we had a good call with Shapoorji and I like their assessment that we feel that at this stage there is a nervousness in the salary class. So people are nervous and they don't understand that jobs are secure and so on and so forth. So there might be a challenge in the whole space unless and until I would come back to how we create a policy, how we create the comfort. A lot of products are coming out, which I'm seeing that now developers creating this 595 kind of product, 1090 products, and so on and so forth, where you put 5%, 10%, and then you put in position. Maybe a lot of that could work, but I still feel affordable housing is the structure. I'm very sure in next 2 to 3 weeks, government would bring a lot of land reforms and a lot of changes in that, and you will see affordable housing would get even more impact and so on and so forth. So it's not going anywhere. It's strong, but I feel that it might have a little bit of hold on time for some time. Now let's go to mid segment. Mid segment is anything which is 50 lakhs to 2 crore kind of a housing segment. That I think would come the first. I would say because fundamentally that's the space which is people shifting homes or people changing to other environments where they were not comfortable in wherever they were. So they would make those decisions very fast, or any capital you have or loose money you have, you would like to park into something. So that would come the most. I will put most focus on the mid segment. Luxury is actually, if you really see where is the luxury, very few inventory. South Bombay has few inventory, and Gurgaon has some, and then a little bit in Bangalore here and there. And last 3-4 years, because the economy was anyway not doing well, so luxury was not available. So there's very little availability of projects available in the market. So I don't think that space is getting any affected. So very little inventory is available in the market. It'll retain, and if then even developers would go in their own cycle of releasing those inventories in their own with patience, not getting desperate on that, because there's no oversupply of that. We are not Dubai, we are not London, we are not I think so. We have no, really speaking, it's more in the secondary market. It's not so much in the primary market. The luxury space is not so much. So I would say, if I'm answering your correct question, in the first 6 months, I'll peg on the mid market first, and then I would say eventually low cost would be the space which we all have to live on. Luxury, I think, the inventory pile up would start in 2021 end or 2022, and then we'll continue to rise over 3 to 5 years.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Over to you, Chetanji, for the next question.
I think there's some problem with the sound again. So unfortunately, I'll go with the next question that Chetan wanted to ask. So my question is to Dr. Kumar. Dr. Kumar, I think a number of large business houses have entered into the real estate segment. I mean, we have Hero, we have Dabur, we have Arvind who are entering into the real estate sector in one way or the other. So do you think the buyer would prefer going with these renowned names already, because people were already familiar with these names, brands like Tata, brands like Reliance, Emami, Dabur, Hero. So do you think it gives you an edge over everybody else in the market because you have already made a very, very strong mark in a different segment altogether?
Very valid question, I must say. First of all, the reality division of Emami is also more than a decade old, and we have delivered more than 17.6 million square feet within in various cities of India and abroad. So we are not new, and we are right now also doing projects in East and South and the West, also in Mumbai. So to answer the first part, we are new. Coming back to the brand preference, I'll again come to the customer-centric point. Right now, as Gaurav also mentioned, people during this COVID time have realized that real estate has become the most important asset class, right? They were preferring mutual funds and other investments, commodity investments for quite some time. But they now think that shelter is something they would definitely want at this point of time. So this is a given thing that real estate, present time, or the times to come, right, is definitely be a preferred option. Coming back to the brand preference, with this present time, whether it is the affordable housing or mid housing and luxury housing, everybody, because of the financial insecurity which is coming in the market due to maybe some kind of job losses or salary cuts and all, people, even if they have decided to buy, right, and you are a self-user or living in a rented apartment, you ought to be very cautious. This is not a time that a person will take a risk. So if a person want to be cautious, he want to have a risk-free investments, he will definitely go by what the best of the brands in the country and the best of the developers are offering. And I would again advocate my point that if you're an actual user, you will be preferring an RTM, a ready to move in property, right? Which is cheaper, which is ready, which is tangible, it is got all the legal compliances, and it is right in front of you. I would like to quote two of the main portals of our country. One is Mr. Pai himself, Magicbricks. According to the, I've been seeing that the demand is decreasing, but I was seeing the data the other day. According to Magicbricks Prop Index, during this COVID time, the number of property searches rather increased by 10%. So if you're an actual user, right, and you want to buy the property, and you're sitting in a house, you are searching all the time, searching for properties. I would like to quote another portal, which is 99 Acres. They have come out with a figure that out of the prospective buyer who are actually looking for a property, 60% of them are still active, searching their property. And please pay attention to my next line. Out of the 60%, 85% of the prospective buyer are looking for a ready property, and from a corporate or a branded developer. So this answers your question. Thank you.
Nobody wants to pay rent and EMI at the same time. It's something that you can touch and feel. Nothing like it. And you've led us in the right direction. I think it's time to dissect some numbers and some data. And we have the best available with us, Mr. Sudhir Pai from Magicbricks. With the numbers, one portal in the country, Magicbricks, I think they keep providing a lot of insightful information. The Prop Index is something that we all follow. What is your analysis right now? And as far as developers, brokers, consumers are concerned, what are the trends that you have witnessed during the lockdown, and what is the industry forecast that you feel, for the next 2 quarters? Because a lot of research has been done, a lot of, I think, time has gone into analyzing, a lot of people who visit your website. So what's the real, I would say, pulse of the market right now?
Thanks, Sahil. That's a good question. It's a question we are asked often while this lockdown is on. So look, first of all, I think it's important that we remain optimistic. And even in the post-COVID environment, we figure out how to get transactions to grow. And there will be a number of methods to doing that. And we can discuss that in the course of the call today. But to answer your question, let me put a bit of context. If you look at this financial year, which is April to March, right, based on the state you're looking at, you're going to lose between 1 to 2 months of the lockdown period. Now, there are some brands which even in the lockdown period have managed to sell strongly, and full credit to them. But by and large, I think if you aggregate it nationally, it's been a period of very weak sales while the lockdown has been on. So every month of lost sale is 8% impact for the year. So if you're going to remain in lockdown for a month or two, that itself is going to depress the revenues for this financial year. We saw a fair bit, and I think we need to recognize what the situation is, because that will prepare us to deal with it best, right? So we've seen reports from CMI, we've seen reports from several other media outlets that millions of people have lost their jobs, several millions more have had their salaries cut. And this is going to have some sort of an adverse impact on real estate unless we choose to do something to mitigate the impact. Now, to answer your question more specifically, we more than anyone else wanted to get a firm handle on what's going to happen on consumer demand and how is that in turn going to affect transactions, right? So we did a survey. I think Nitesh referred to some of it. So I'll tell you some of the key takeaways from the survey that we did and what were the findings, because this will give you some kind of a quantitative understanding into what's likely to happen on demand and therefore on transactions for the rest of the year. In summary, the key takeaways from the survey were as follows. One, a third of the users told us that they're likely to drop out, right? But the good news out of this finding was that 2/3 of the buyers are still in the market. Frankly, we were expecting the impact to be a lot more given the kind of trends that we've been seeing around, right? So one takeaway therefore is a third of the people are buying out. You can also interpret it as 70% of the users continue to stay in the market. Of the remainder 2/3 who are saying that they will continue to look for a house, 75% of them say that they would want to look for prices which are 10 or 15% below their budgets. And some of that is driven by wage cuts or foreseeable uncertainty on the finance front for them in the next few quarters ahead. A lot of users are also saying they're likely to defer their purchases by 3 or 6 months. So when you put all of these three things together, a third of the users would drop out of the market. The rest of the users are saying they could take 3 to 6 months more to decide. And some of them want to reduce their budgets by 10 or 15%. If we choose to do nothing, we are looking at a market where we could end up with 30 to 50% lower transactions than last year. Right? That said, I've been speaking with a lot of developers and industry friends over the last several weeks. And I can tell you, I'm finding people very desirous of wanting to take action. They're very receptive to inputs. And I think if the industry takes the right steps, we can reduce the adverse impact considerably, right? And I can see the industry well aligned to wanting to take those steps to reduce the impact. Now, what kind of steps could be taken in this kind of an environment? I think there are two things. One, the selling and engagement process with the consumer has to change quite a bit, right? Because you are in an environment with social distancing, the need to reduce contact, and real estate, if you would well know, has been a high touch industry, a lot of one-to-one meetings, across the table presentations, and that's how real estate is sold. Some of that will need to change. Just like we are doing Zoom calls, I guess the industry has to become comfortable with how to engage consumers through video calling and a variety of other tools so that you don't lose the sales edge. And two, a lot of consumers in the same survey and our conversations with them have been saying that if price were to moderate a bit, it would drive them to do a lot of transactions. There's one other useful data point that I want to share with the group, right? Which we've been seeing on Magicbricks for a long time now, and this was true even pre-COVID, which is that for every one consumer who was buying a house, there were 7 other people who were searching but not buying, right? So think of them, some of them were window shoppers, many of them were waiting for the right deal. But if you were to offer the right trigger, you have many more people on the fringes whom you could convert than the people who are actively searching for a home, which is why I started by saying I'm quite hopeful. I think the industry is also keen to reduce the adverse impact. And I think if we all take the right steps, we should see a year with much lower impact than otherwise.
I think you've increased the market size by straight away 7 times for us. And that's exactly how we're going to be looking at the market now. There are a lot of people who are considering to buy, searching, window shopping, or probably just scouting for properties. So we'll make sure that when we focus on our lead generation and digital marketing, we focus on these points. And I think you spoke about technology. And I think Smitaji wanted to exactly ask you the next question of the role of technology. Smitaji, over to you.
So the same thing, like as you have explained now, and all the analysis and everything. So everyone in the market is saying that it's time to embrace the technology and we need to go online to cross the line.
Yeah.
What are your views on this? And also for developers and brokers, what all they can use in terms of technology to communicate with the clients and to sell it faster?
Look, I think a few things are going to play out in the post-COVID environment. I think consumers are going to make far fewer site visits. So let me just give you an analogy. It would have been quite common for consumers to visit maybe 15, 18 different sites. And then the sites which they like, they would make 3 to 5 visits to those shortlisted sites before they ended up transacting. So there were a lot of physical visits that were quite common in a pre-COVID kind of environment. What is likely to happen in the post-COVID environment is people will be far more careful with only wanting to visit the sites which they really like and the ones where they want to engage further. So therefore, what are the implications for industry? Like I was saying a while back, important to engage the consumer digitally, which otherwise you could do one-to-one in physical meetings, right? There is a lot which I think we will have to learn very quickly on how to therefore sell and engage to consumers using video calls, using live streaming, using virtual tours, using tools like AR and VR far more effectively. So all of these which were somewhere on the fringes, right, I think will become mainstream soon. And I think the salespeople and the developers who put these tools to good use will find their funnels converting much better than the others. The second area where tech needs to come is that real estate is document intensive. There's a lot of paperwork in the course of the transaction. You know, your registrations require a lot of paperwork. Taking a home loan requires a lot of paperwork, so on and so forth. A fair bit of that could be digitized, right? So I think between these two steps, a significant amount of digitization so that you reduce paper and take it all online. And second, engaging consumers more using all of these tools which are available. Many of these tools have been available for a long time, but they suffered from inadequate usage. I think if we start using all of them, we should do quite well in this.
Thank you so much, Sudhir. I think a lot of key points which I think everybody might have noted it down. I definitely have noted it down because technology definitely is going to be a game changer. Because I think the one of the first success for a real estate consultant, for a developer prior to COVID times was the site visit.
Yeah.
That if the site visit that has happened, probably we have moved closer to a sale. And that is something which might not happen in the same numbers, in the same quantity as it used to happen. So we have to change our success, I would say, barriers that we talk about. I think another very, very important aspect that we all need to discuss right now. People are definitely talking about the NRIs. I mean, some people are saying that it is one of the best time for them to invest because of rupee devaluation. Probably, I mean, people are also projecting some kind of job loss in US, or maybe so many things are being talked about. So my developer friends, Shapoorji and Nitesh ji, I mean, if you guys can highlight a little bit about, because NRI investment has been very, very important as far as real estate in India is concerned. I think some developers, they sell a large quantity, almost some 20, 25 odd percent of their inventory to the NRI community. So we have a lot of NRIs also in this session right now. I mean, streaming us, seeing us live on Facebook and various different other platforms. So what do you think? Do you really think it's the best time for them? And if yes, why? And what are the key aspects that they should look at to make sure that they are ending up buying something safe and secure? Niteshji, you can start first, and then Abhishek, you can talk about it.
Yeah, I
Sure.
can start first. Okay, great. So, Sahil, it's a very good question. In our internal webinars also, my salespeople across different cities of projects were asking that recently they are seeing a lot of interest from the NRI community, and it's good that some of them are part of this webinar as well. See, these NRIs, if you analyze, they were always interested in buying an asset class, real estate asset class in their native countries. But they were the fence sitters. They were waiting for some kind of trigger to happen. I think this COVID-19 is that trigger that have actually made them very, very interested. Especially when they are living in their countries where they're working. Right now, they're alienated from the world. There's no mode of transportations out there. And especially the NRIs who have recently gone 3 to 5 years, they are feeling very insecure. I'm not talking about the NRIs who are just 30, 40 years old generations out there. They themselves treat themselves as citizens out there. They do what their other citizens would be doing it. But I'm talking about the recent NRIs who have gone from various software ITs companies or started working out there. They feel that, okay, I have to take out, there has to be some kind of a shelter that in times of need, I have a house, I have a shelter in my native city, in my native countries. So I'd like to state, I go by certain data, Sudhir ji also is also a person of data. See, as per ANAROC, out of, they have done a survey just recently in the COVID time, they did a survey on especially the NRI population. 68% of the NRIs were preferring real estate as an asset class versus 16% towards the stocks. Mind you, just before the pre-COVID time, this was totally reversed. About 85% of people who are living, who are actually thinking of buying real estate stocks or other commodities, the stocks and other commodities than real estate. This is the reverse turnaround that has happened. That is kind of insecurity. The other thing that has happened, which you have just spoken, Sahib, it's a rupee devaluation. I've been told that's close to 10% rupee is devalued. So the house which they anyway are deciding to buy is coming at 10% cheaper, right? The third trigger that has happened, I have already spoken, and some of my fellow panelists have also spoken, is the interest rates have come down. It's going to further going to come down. There's no doubt out there. So property is getting, your house is getting more cheaper, right? And the fourth thing which every NRI would look for is a favorable environment in the country. Now imagine now 20 lakh crore invested in the reviving of economy, which is close to 10% of the GDP. How many nations are doing so? That is a pure revival across the industries out there. It's a favorable environment that they would think that they should invest up. I will just try to quote one more data, that India is the only country in the ease of doing business index, which is in the top improvers, and for the third consecutive year. So this is the environment that India is building into this NRI population. So I give a total thumbs up to NRI community that this is a time. Please take a decisions. The all kind of incentives, great environment. You must take a house. Irrespective of whether you want to come back now or maybe secure yourself a house for your rest from some other time in life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nitesh. Abhishek, I mean, especially in Bangalore, Pune, these so-called IT cities, Hyderabad, Chennai, I think a lot of people who have moved out in western parts of the world, they do invest back home, people from the IT sector. And you guys have projects in both Pune, Bangalore. So what is the interest level that you're getting from the NRI community right now? And do you also feel that, yes, this is a better time and they should not wait and watch?
So Sahil, I'll answer this question in two parts. One, that current trend, as I mentioned, that we have been engaging with a lot of customers with the online platform. The new trend we have seen is that normally the NRIs were mainly investors. They were the retail investors who would want to buy a home as it was a safe asset class. We have seen a recent trend that now we are seeing a lot of NRIs buying it as an end user. So which means that there is a lot of reverse migration which may be expected. So we are seeing a lot of focus from NRIs on the products which are getting nearly or near possession. That's one. In terms of all those NRIs who are right now logged into your webinar or who are looking to invest, I think there are two messages for them. For those who think from their mind, those who do a lot of research, obviously the rupee depreciation you mentioned, the lower interest rates, and the attractive offers run out by many developers. It's a combined package for them. And for those who think from heart, then you see what's happening with the migrants. So when there is uncertainty, you want to head home. So I believe all of those who are fence sitters, as Dr. Nitesh said, this is the time to get your property locked in. And obviously it's a value buying right now with such attractive prices, as the prices have not increased because of so many other reforms like RERA and GST. So it's a very, very attractive opportunity for NRIs right now.
Thank you, Abhishek. My question to the same one to Mr. Marya. I mean, REMAX is present in almost 117 odd countries. So how are you planning to take the advantage of this huge network which is there and get the NRI community who's really probably finding this time a really bullish one to invest back home in their native country?
Thanks. Obviously for REMAX, it's a great opportunity because we have the largest network, 110 countries, and obviously we see we can come on advantage, especially now, to really facilitate the entire network and try to bring in NRI investments. But honestly, if I really see that, I'm a little bit disappointed in terms of how we are approaching this issue. So this is a global issue. It's not a India-based issue. So any country, and I always respect Middle East, and especially UAE, very, very proactive. Whenever any disturbance happens, the developers come together, they create products, they're very aggressive in the market, they go out in the world markets and try to attract. The UK has been always like that. In London is already, if you see these days, a lot of advertisements, even in Bennett platforms and a lot of other platforms, you will see properties in UK, properties in Canada, properties in Turkey, but you don't see this happening from India. So we have never really gone and approached as a collective investment asset class internationally. And this is the time, I think the message very clearly is that unless and until developers or associations come together, create a platform, obviously REMAX is happy to extend that ability. But unless and until we have a very definite product for going out, because honestly, if you live in London and you see that there is now an opportunity to invest in India, but there is also an opportunity to invest in Europe. And so why would I invest in India? What is the compelling reason? And also, I think we need to really split it between who's end users. End users obviously come from Middle East and people who won't rarely come back, or who were on the short-term jobs in markets like Dubai or other places, and they're returning back. But that would actually take up the lease market. So first they come and rent it out, and then they subsequently buy a home. But if you really want to seriously look at investment, we need to do a very strong effort. And I would say maybe Sudhir and us, we should really think through and say, how we can collectively come and create a product and go out and engage maybe a couple of credible developers to go in the market. Second part is that what is going to be the investment class people are going to invest, So one, I would call the RGPs, the revenue generating properties, So we need to really get out and show and say, if you invest in India, this is the kind of returns you can see from a short term or a long term perspective and so on and so forth. So a lot of revenue generating properties have to come out and developers have to step up and create those products. And demonstrate those products. I don't think that products are currently available, but I think a lot of thinking has to come in. I also feel that a lot of specialty retail would come in, specialty asset class would come in, and industrial would get a lot of value. I mean, I think the new these parks which are being created, a lot of other special zones being created would attract both individual investment and what I call sophisticated investment. And then we also would see a lot of other developments which are specialized developments. I think leisure would also play a very important role. People would buy a home in Goa or buy a home in some holiday destination. By the time we have a very strong product and a very strong messaging out there, and I think enough of us talking about Incredible India. I mean, I think we need to really add something on Incredible India and say Incredible Investment India or something like that, where we get people to invest here, so we all talk, my frustration is that I'm talking these days on a lot of developers, but they don't have a compelling product. They want to sell the same product the same way to the same audience, right? So it's nothing going to happen, unless and until people raise up and say, I have a special product and I want to give a special offering. I want to attract these people to buy, and they buy in community, and we know whenever the decision of buying happened from NRIs, they don't buy alone, they buy in community. So unless you create a product, and this is my strong message to everybody, and we're more than happy at REMAX to extend our full support and full strength and marketing and so on and so forth. But by the time we have a very genuine effort, and that's something I hope so this comes up. And another final thing is that people also want exit. They might invest in India, but when they want to move out, they want to take that money out, then they have to have a reason that it's easy to do that. And that's also very complex, because if a doctor working out of the US has excess cash and likes to invest back in India, but he might not come to India back, or he would like at a certain stage take his money back to US or any other part of the world. So he needs to get that ease of taking that money out. So these are areas I genuinely feel that it's billions of dollars which are lying out there. But are we ready as India to create a compelling case that this is attractive to us versus any part of the world?
Very rightly addressed. I think whenever we sell any properties in Dubai, I think the first slide at every developer that gives us why Dubai. That India story is not available with any of the developers. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about our cities. We don't talk about our country. I think the why India story has to be created, and that can only be created by, I think, credible bodies like probably Neredco, Credai, or even the broker bodies that we have. And we can, somebody has to start, because once that story is available, I think then people would know something other than culture, that why should they come into India for any kind of commercial or business activity. That's something that we need to start highlighting now, because in all our conventions, events that happen at the India level, wherein the country is represented, I think apart from the folk dances and the culture that we show, it's high time that we start showing India as a great business hub, and the ease for doing business, that has to be highlighted in bold and capital. So thank you so much, Gaurav sir, for highlighting that. Smita ji, over to you for the next one.
I would like to ask Sudhir sir that the industry has spoken enough on what policy makers need to do to revive the real estate sector, and we have seen many measures being taken by the state and central government as well. But what are your viewpoints on what developers and brokers need to do from their side to build the consumer confidence back?
Smita, I couldn't hear you clearly, but I guess you're asking about what the government and
I'm breaking the voice, so I'll repeat that question if you don't mind. So you want to understand from the third-party view, from real estate portal view, what is the suggestion that you have for the real estate brokers and for the real estate developers, because everybody is trying to do their own introspection. But sometimes we get so busy in our day-to-day routine life that we stop thinking out of the box. So we wanted to understand that what is that out of the box opinion, suggestion that you would want to give to all the consultants and the developers out there?
Okay. So look, I think there are actions that are possible and that are necessary from both the government as well as from within the industry itself. Right? And I'm hoping that we see sufficient action on both sides. I think a lot of people from industry have spoken. I think in terms of government action, and look, all of these actions, I think some of the actions would be short-term actions, which are necessary so that we can cure the immediate problem which is there. And some of the actions which are required are slightly more mid and long-term, which could make sure that real estate overall becomes a much larger and a deeper market than what it is today. So if you ask me from the government side, what are short-term actions possible? I think the direct action which is possible is if stamp duty and registrations are reduced, right? I know that every industry asks for reduction of taxes, but I have a good reason why this is useful for real estate, which is today the way taxation works is you collect a lot of stamp duty and registrations from the small number of people who are buying a new house, right? There is an alternative which is possible, which is that you can reduce stamp duty and registration and seek to make up for the revenue at least to some extent by increasing property taxes, right? If you increase property taxes, you can tax a much wider base of people who own houses. It will also be a strong deterrent against keeping houses vacant, right? So I hope some measure like this comes along. It will help us both in the short term as well as the long term. Now, coming to the question you asked about what can industry do, which is both brokers as well as developers. Look, in terms of short-term actions, I think there are two areas to think of, and then there is a mid-term and long-term solution. I think in the short term, while I understand that most developers are working on thin margins, and we are unlikely to see a significant price reduction, but it's also true that a lot of them are also facing liquidity issues and are desirous to generate at least short-term sales so that we can get back on track. That might create a small window in which prices are reduced for a certain finite number of units that need to be sold to make up for the liquidity issue. This should be an opportunity to sell hard, should also be an opportunity for consumers to be able to get houses at a bit of a bargain. So I think that's one step that should certainly be considered. The second, I spoke about it extensively, was on how to adopt tech to make sure that we don't lose in this environment. From a mid and long-term perspective, I think Gaurav spoke about it extensively. I think there is a lot of work at improving product, right? And when you say improving product, what are the steps possible? I think Gaurav referred to a lot of it. So if you look at commercial real estate, I think a lot of new asset classes can be created, right? For example, fractionalization of commercial property and offering it to retail investors is a great idea whose time has come, right? Creating a lot of other retail classes around leisure, retail is all possible. Similarly, in residential, I think the current trends, I think Nitesh spoke about it some time back. So many people are at home and you realize that there are shortcomings at home. Many people don't have a separate room to work out of. Some people have broadband issues. So should developers be creating products? There are some products in some cities like 1.5 room kitchens, 2.5 unit houses, some of them which have a study in between. Some apartment societies could probably come up with business centers so that if you have important calls to attend to and you don't want to take it from home, go to the business center and take some of those calls. So whether it's commercial or residential, I think creating a lot of these products, right, for whom there would be, create those compelling value propositions which attract consumers would be good mid-term and long-term kind of decisions. So there's a lot one can do, whether you're a broker or whether you're a developer. And I think we can see receptive ears at this point of time, and we're hoping some of these steps get taken.
Thank you, Sudhirji. I think very, very well advised. Niteshji and Abhishek, and during this pandemic, I mean, people have spent almost 2 months in their apartments, in their villas, in their houses. As a developer, do you think that now, I mean, post this COVID situation, are you going to be doing some kind of an architectural changes, some kind of a layout changes in your projects that you're going to be building? And like Sudhirji said, is there going to be a new product altogether? something which would keep such unplanned situations in mind. Maybe, as he suggested, a business center in the apartment complex. Have you thought of some of these changes that you're going to be probably incorporating in the future projects that you're going to be launching, both commercial and residential? Nitesh ji, you can start first.
Well, definitely, Sahil. See what COVID has taught, and I mentioned some time back, and Sudhir also said the same thing, that in this lockdown situation, people realize that nothing is enough, right? We need to have better houses, especially there is incentives as for home loans and other incentives which are coming on. But if you see the design aspect, over the last 5,000 years of history of civilization, we all have been doing planning and designing, right? There were stages where an architects, were planning dense buildings, populations. We were going all time high and higher and higher. And in this social distancing age, we have realized, okay, nothing is enough. Whether it's residential or commercial or retail, the people were planning co-working spaces and 150 square feet to now an 80 square feet per person kind of thing. Again, it's going to come back to 125, 150 square feet because the social distancing norm is going to remain for some time, and maybe forever, right? So I think the future would be more stress on mixed land use developments, because you all have to focus that the transit time is a clear wastage of time. We all will have to develop, we developers, Shapoorji and other great developers as corporates have to sit together and see how we can make more mixed land use developments where all kind of facilities, amenities are within the complex, right? You don't have to move out, to send your child to a school or a shopping mall, or so to say. But this is the age that is going to come, because we have to be, Indians have to be very adaptive. We have to be very dynamic, and we have to understand, what is the need of the hour. And definitely these kind of design changes going to happen, which is retail, because retail also, if you see, during the first week of the lockdown, most of the retailers, came back to the developer or the respective landlords that we are going to pay rent during this lockdown. We are going to pay the maintenance charges, and developers were all this while negotiating that, okay, you have to pay the basic charges and all. But shopping, as you see, one is a need-based and one is a luxury, like it's a meeting place for the families and friends to get their conditioned environment kind of a thing. You will see for some time that it will be a need-based kind of a shopping. People would obviously know what they have to buy. They will still be going to shopping centers. They will be buying the items, and they would have made list of items, and not impulsive kind of a thing. Similarly, commercials, as I said, the norms would change, and we will have better distances, and maybe this kind of technologies that we have all have become adaptive to, the webinars and through the video conferencing and all. More these kind of meetings would happen. One great thing that this lockdown has given us, we were also not very adaptive to this technology of the Zoom and the webinars out there. We used to always feel that person meeting and face-to-face interaction is much better. But see, we are addressing close to 300 people right now from all the status and power panelists out here at one point in time and sharing their opinions. This is a great thing that has happened out there. So definitely design changes is going to happen. You all have to think tank, more of analysis have to come out, and we have to definitely rethink our designs and our future projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nitesh ji. Abhishek, do you have similar views? Because I think I stay in an apartment, and I always wish that I hope there was a co-working space within the apartment complex that we could just go to, probably spend a couple of hours, work and come back. And a lot of things that people have actually, I would say, written down that this is what they need in the next house that they're going to be purchasing. So Shapoorji, Palonji being the pioneers as far as the construction is concerned. So what are your thoughts on this? What is your need of the hour?
Sure, Sahil, interesting question, and some of the very interesting ideas also shared by Sudhir ji. So actually, this is an opportune time to actually read customers' minds. So we are doing a series of surveys, considering the fact that in the lockdown we are able to get some more bandwidth from customers. We are doing a lot of surveys behind it, some of these ideas of co-working spaces, actually came to our drawing board when we were, for example, planning a Gurgaon project. But that point of time, we thought that why would customer want an additional space in the complex, and rather more space should be given to recreation. But in the changing times, things are changing, and obviously new needs will come up. In fact, I was the other day attending one of the sessions where one of the educationists mentioned a very good point that every crisis has led to a lot of innovations. So he mentioned about World War One, and post that the technology in the fighter planes changed, or World War II, post which a lot of women came into workforce. Or for example, demonetization, and now we have a next door grocery shop, or even the pani puri wala having Paytm. So I think one of the things which this COVID will change is the stigma attached to work from home. I mean, real estate, we could not imagine that our teams can work from home. So I think work from home will be the need of hour. And once more companies like TCS has declared 75% work from home, consumers' need inside the home will change. I think more flexibility or more practical solution would be to have smart furnitures. Because as Gauravji mentioned, an additional space, or as it was mentioned by Sudhir, 1.5 or 2.5, affordability is also important. So there were some developers who tried off with smart homes, which become office space in the day and a bedroom or a guest room in the night. So those kind of solutions, we developers will have to work with the interior guys and maybe able to give the customer solution, as a package product with the apartments. So that will really help them to just plug and play kind of home.
Thanks, Abhishek. Mr. Marya, I mean, your team has the real pulse of the market and the customers, and they really understand what the expectation that the customers have right now. Has there been a shift in the expectation? Has there been a little bit of change? Are people expecting something different out of developers, both in residential and commercial sectors right now?
So, a lot of mixed opinion is coming out, Sahil. I think at this stage, people who are in home and they're thinking of a lot of bold ideas and say world would change and people would work out of home. I don't agree with that, but I think it's not a good news for commercial real estate because if people start working out of home, who's going to go to offices and so on and so forth. And actually, it's relatively. I mean, some things are possible, some things are not possible. I think productivity and a lot of other things are not possible. Security is a big issue working out of home. And so I look at a real estate broking company. We would like to see commercial real estate being rising and going. But yes, I think people are looking more comfort and security. That's for sure. So they would look at homes, and I advised a company out of China about years back. They make taxi homes. They were saying that you can change the take our bed up and it becomes a room which is more for your office and things like that. So a lot of those innovations would come. A lot of those innovations, I think people would be ready to accept. But at this stage, I think one of the key things in people's mind certainly is security and comfort. Security would mean they need to have these gated communities. Gated communities are a great idea, which have to offer safety, and people can shop within the community, and they can have maybe schools a little bit. I'm not saying too much of work.
You'll have to be a little louder. There is some issue with your voice, as I can see on the chat. Yeah.
So I'm saying that maybe work in the community, within the gating community is a little too far-fetched. But obviously basic comforts. Basic comfort means convenience shopping, a little bit of healthcare, primary healthcare, and also basic convenience things would come in. I mean, I think they should always be part of it in your development's design. And urban design actually was always all about that. It always gave a provision of one small temple, a little bit is a convenience shopping center, a primary school, a primary healthcare center. All these things would be essential part of your development design. I think a lot of ignorance was done. It was not that it was not there earlier. Urban design always had that, but a lot of developers find a way not to do things and created developments which were what I call passing the by and not doing that. I mean, I think now it will be very important to bring that values back in the system. But I would still say commercial real estate or people just working out of home. I know why a lot of companies are raising these issues of saying 70% of people would work out of home. And actually, I can tell you, we also are a large company and we also have a lot of offices and so on. So it's absolutely disaster. You cannot work out of home. That's my own opinion. It doesn't work. I mean, you still have to go to offices and you need to still work with your colleagues and you need to have environments which can welcome people, while you need to have a safety. But that's my own opinion. I would say that is not going anywhere. But yes, safety and comfort would play a very important role, if I can answer that.
You have the same opinion, because work from home is something that I think every Indian has become familiar with this term, work from home. I think on Instagram, Facebook, there are so many people that put pretending to be working from home. Do you think it's possible? And do you think it can have a counter impact on the commercial real estate?
Oh, yeah, are you asking me? Okay. So let me speak about Magicbricks. We've been working from home now 2 full months. We asked our teams to work from home about a week before the lockdown was lifted, and our teams continue to work from home. Now, if I look at Magicbricks and try and see how it must be working for other companies, look, there are some functions, and I can understand why companies like TCS and the IT services companies are saying so. Some functions like product and tech, I think find it quite efficient to work from homes, right? Their productivities have not increased. In fact, several friends I have spoken to have argued that their productivities have gone up in a work from home environment simply because they save commute time, and also because the chit chats that you do in office actually go down. So they've been actually 20-30% more productive sitting at home than they were when they were coming to office. So I think there will be a segment of industry and some certain functions where I think certainly work from home as a long-term option could end up being viable. That said, I'm aware that there is a counter view as well, which is that work from home today is doing so well simply because there are no other distractions, right? You sit at home and you have virtually nothing to do other than watch TV and maybe work, and people are preferring to work. So when the markets return back to normal, you don't know how it will play out. So I think we will have to watch this trend on whether work from home ends up being a sustainable long-term phenomenon, or whether this ends up being something which is relevant to a lockdown kind of phase and then peters out. But if you ask me, I think some portion of the work is likely to move work from home. I know that several global companies have had a section of the staff who have been working from home several years, right? But that was not true across the rest of the market. I think thanks to the lockdown, people will discover it's possible for some parts of the workforce to be efficient even from a work from home environment. So I think we should be prepared for that. A certain segment of workers are likely to do work from home. It will reduce the need for commercial space, and we have to be prepared to deal with it.
Yes, I think we'll have to wait for the lockdown to end to really see whether this is actually working or not working, whether people are working from home or not working from home when the market's open. My last question to Nitesh ji. Nitesh ji, out of commercial, residential, retail, I mean, what are you going to be putting your money on in the next 2 quarters?
Well, if you talk about generic in the market, well, all the segments are going to coexist, right? There are various kind of opinions that are coming that residential is the name of the asset that everybody should go for. But if you have a house, you have to go to the office. Well, you have to go to a mall to office where all the brands are together. So everything is going to exist, it is a matter of time that, okay, residential may come sooner than the other asset class, but everything is going to coexist. As Emami, if you're coming to Emami Realty, we are focusing more on residential. We already have many projects in the east, south, and west, and we further will be launching 3 to 4 projects in the next 5 to 8 months from now. We were seriously thinking about deferment or something, but as Emami, we believe with such a background of performance for the last 4 or 5 decades, and the deliveries and the customer loyalties, we are being asked to launch the projects rather. So, if you ask me that all the verticals are going to exist, I will just take on from Mr. Sudhir's opinion about the work from home may still can be the answer. I think in real estate, if you ask me, I think work from home is not going to work. We have realized over the last 50 odd days, we ought to have personal meetings. And of course, the construction sites have to go on, right? So how can we work out? I think the IT-enabled services, IT services like the TCS has announced and some other companies have announced, it can still be functional because they have different timings in the various markets around the world. They can still work on, but in real estate, I think it is difficult to work. And it's a way of life that we have all adapted and grown with, right? We definitely want to wake up a certain time. And when you work from home, you have the luxury can do any point of time. You get ready, you have breakfast, you go at a particular time, have the thumb impressions and those kind of. It's the way that we have all grown. We have become adaptive to that. I think that's the more concentrated efforts rather than working from home. This is my belief. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. I think we had an incredible, amazing, insightful discussion. And we almost touched every aspect that people are wanting to learn about as far as the future of real estate is concerned. Unfortunately, we couldn't have the Honorable Minister join us. He was in some rural area where there was some serious network issue. And we had some problems in the Zoom app as well in the beginning. But I think it started off a little shaky with the technical errors that we had. But I think it went on really well. And I think everybody, right from Mr. Marya, Abhishek, Nitesh ji, Sudhir ji, everybody, thank you. I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming into this session. We have got some amazing reviews already that I'm getting on my phone, emails right now. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chetan, although you were throughout on a technical glitch, but thank you so much for being with us. Yes, Smita, over to you.
Thank you so much.
I would like to thank all of you on behalf of REMAX, SSPL and REMAX India for all the insightful thoughts and guiding towards the further course. We thank you for taking the time to join by managing your busy schedule. Also, thank you all the attendees who have joined us from various parts of country. I want to thank each one of you for your commitment and enthusiasm for taking part in this webinar. And thank you, Sahil ji, Chetan ji, for their moderating efforts. It was our pleasure to hosting you all and looking forward to connect with you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Be safe. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Smita.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Sahil, Gaurav.
Thank you.
Good work. And thanks for having all of us.
Thank you, Sudhir ji, Nitesh ji. Thank you, Abhishek ji.
Thank you so much. Be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Thanks.